Alex Cordova in this case as plaintiff.
My name is Mark Kalen Boyd, and I am Dr. Casey Lancaster in this case.
My name is Caroline Moeller, and I am Taylor St. Clair in this case.
Are there any other matters?
Yes, Your Honor. Today we will be using the National Mock Trial Rules, and at this time, I'd like to tender some documents to the bench. I'd like to tender the statements of facts and the rules of evidence. May I approach the bench?
You may.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd also like to cover the mock trial rule of unfair extrapolation, which states that you can invent facts outside of the case to create an advantage or to prejudice the opposing team. And Your Honor, at this time, we ask that we adhere to Rule 615, which is constructive sequestration. We ask that the witnesses are constructively sequestered.
They should be sequestered, and I am aware of the extrapolation.
Your Honor, we also ask that time be stopped for objections and any remaining time be reserved for a rebuttal.
They are by rule.
And Your Honor, we want to know what are your preferences on moving about the well?
You may move about freely unless you're approaching a witness.
We also want to know what are your preferences for submitting evidence?
You would submit them to the clerk, and once they've been admitted, the clerk is sitting to my left.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Defense, any matters to take up?
Yes, Your Honor. First, I would like to start off by introducing my team as well. My co-counsels Ariane Darby and Derek Crenshaw. And my witnesses are Dr. Morgan Fairchild, who is portrayed by Kyra Renee, Dr. Aaron Hunt, who is Alyssa Decoded, and Dr. General Samantha Watson, who is Allie Moore. We do not have any household matters to take care of. The plaintiff has the authority to take care of these.
Okay, in that case, then we'll go to opening statements. You may be seated.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Would you now proceed with your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
You may.
Good morning, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury and guests of the court. My name is Reginald Boudreaux, and I'll be delivering the opening statement on behalf of the plaintiff in the case of Alex Cordova versus the United States government. The death of one is a tragedy, but the death of many is simply a statistic. Although this quote may be compelling to people, it is not compelling to the government. Here today, we have Mr. Alex Cordova, a wonderful man who lost his loving wife because of the reckless decisions of the government. Pat Cordova suffered from stage 4 leukemia and was unable to receive her treatment because of the government. A virus arose in Midlands, Louisiana. They put a quarantine over the area, and they also established martial law, meaning no one can go in or out. Therefore, Pat was trapped. But fortunately, the government invented a vaccine to control the virus. But yet, even though they formulated this vaccine to control the virus, they did not let Pat receive the treatment she needed. In fact, Alex Cordova reached out to the General Sam Watson, and he denied it. He lied. He said he would help her, but he did not. He let her rot in the hands of the government. By doing this, they violated Ms. Cordova's right to her Fifth Amendment, meaning she has the freedom of liberty, the freedom of life. Of course, they did take away her freedom to move about, which is completely understandable due to the quarantine. But General Watson had everything he needed to help her, but he did not. Today, the defense will come to tell you that they had a compelling reason to not let Ms. Pat receive her treatment. But we, the plaintiff, will prove otherwise. First, we'll call Alex, her husband. He'll tell you how on numerous occasions he reached out to General Watson, and General Watson did not reply. General Watson ignored him. Next, we'll call Dr. Casey Lancaster. He'll tell you how she was responding, although she did have stage 4 leukemia, which is the most aggressive stage, she was still responding amazingly to the treatment that was given to her. And then we'll call Ms. Taylor Sinclair, the hospital administrator. She'll tell you how they were not provided the proper equipment, the proper supplies, or the proper room to give to the patients that were already there. Yes, we do understand the government has a responsibility to protect many, but the government also has a responsibility to protect the individual if they have a power to do so, and the government has that power. But the government was not worried about that one tragedy. They were worried about the statistic that could be used against them. So all we ask of you today is to find the government liable for the death of Ms. Pat Cordova. Do not let that one tragedy become another statistic. We thank you in advance.
Vance, you prepared to go forward with your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please do.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, opposing counsel, my name is Jared Crenshaw, and I stand before you today in defense of the United States of America from Mr. Alex Cordova, who places the blame of the death of his dear wife, Pat, on the United States. Pat had stage 4 leukemia, which is indeed a deadly disease, and lived in the Midlands area when a breakout of deadly T-virus happened. The United States had no other choice but to place a quarantine around the entire city for the protection of its citizens, for the surrounding citizens, and for the whole entire nation. If this disease were to have spread to just a few more people, this could have led to a nationwide pandemic, killing millions of people. The defense brings forth today 3 witnesses that will prove by the end of this session that everything done was a necessity to the survival of this nation. General Sam Watson. General Sam Watson was the leader of the United States military and was who established the quarantine in Midlands. General Watson will tell you of her previous experiences with a similar virus and how it was essential that this virus be contained. Dr. Morgan Fairchild is a military virologist who developed a vaccine and cure for this terrible disease. Dr. Fairchild will tell you how quickly and the hard work it took to develop this vaccine. And our third witness is Ms. Erin Hunt, a CDC scientist that specialized in the implementing and creation of vaccines, who worked with Dr. Morgan Fairchild to develop this cure. By the end of this session, I hope that you will believe in what we believe and that all necessary precautions were taken to contain and control this terrible disease. Thank you.
Call your first witness.
Right at this time, plaintiff would like to call Mr. Alex Cordova to the stand.
By the way, would all the witnesses rise and raise their right hand? You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God under the rules of the mock trial?
Yes.
You may be seated. Would Alex Cordova please come forward and take the stand?
Good morning, Mr. Cordova. Can you briefly introduce yourself to the jury? Spell your last name for the record.
My name is Alex Cordova, Cordova.
Are you currently employed?
No, I'm not employed. I'm a retired U.S. War veteran.
Are you married?
Formerly, I'm now a widower.
Mr. Cordova, can you briefly explain your military experience to the jury?
Throughout the military, I was stationed in 3 areas. I was stationed in Iraq, Afghanistan, and also Africa.
And can you explain your operation in Africa?
When we were in Africa, we were studying the virus, which is known as the T virus. We were going through villages, studying the villages and seeing what happened, as well as seeing if we could help in any way.
And while you were there, what was the carnage like?
It was gruesome. It's one of the only ways to really explain it sufficiently. If you weren't dead, you were infected, and so it was strong.
Was this your last time dealing with this particular strand of the virus?
I saw something similar to it in Midlands, Louisiana.
And what was the reaction whenever it surfaced in the Midlands?
I was surprised, but I wasn't as worried about it as I was the one in Africa. It didn't seem as strong.
How so?
If you compare the symptoms of the two, the symptoms are the same, but the actions are much more passive. It wasn't as strong, and it didn't go at the host as hard as it did beforehand.
So were the people in Africa better equipped to handle this?
Not by any means. Africa is, or where we were in Africa is considered a third world country. So, no, they were not.
So, can you briefly explain to the court what a quarantine is?
Quarantine is where a certain area is isolated from anything outside of it. That way nothing spreads and leaks to the outer area.
And when this virus surfaced, was a quarantine in place?
In Midlands?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it was.
So how did this quarantine, how was your wife's condition at that time?
She had stage 4 leukemia. We were hopeful about it, and we were trying to get treatment. Quarantine made it difficult.
So how necessary was it that she received the treatments?
It was very necessary. She needed them weekly. If not, then with stage 4 leukemia, she wouldn't survive for very long.
So under the quarantine, did she receive her treatments?
No. She didn't receive anything.
Why not?
They say, nothing can come in and nothing can come out. I attempted to contact General Sam Watson and see if there was anything that could be done about that, and nothing came up.
So how did you contact General Watson?
I contacted General Sam Watson through email.
And if you were to see these emails again, would you recognize them?
Yes, I would.
Let the record reflect that I'm showing opposing counsel which was marked as exhibit number 6. Wish to approach the bench.
You may.
Wish to approach the witness.
You may.
Mr. Cordova, do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
Can you explain to the court what it is?
These are the emails between me and General Sam Watson.
Are they altered in any way?
Not to my knowledge.
Is this a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to offer, file, and introduce what's marked as exhibit number 6 and the plaintiff exhibit 8.
Is there any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This document is hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, this document is not being used to assert the truth of the matter, but this document is being used to assert the fact that he and General Watson did have direct contact.
Your Honor, and permission to be heard. Pursuant to opposing counsel's argument, this document is between Alex Cordova and General Watson. The party opponent in this case is the United States government, which is not pursuant to the hearsay exception.
General Watson is the general of the United States government. She is a representative of the United States government in this case, so it is very much not hearsay.
Well, my understanding is that your argument is not hearsay because you're not arguing for the truth of the context,
Yes, Your Honor.
solely for the conversation.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any response to the argument that it's not hearsay at all, so no exception applies?
Your Honor, my objection stands.
And I'm going to overrule your objection and keep it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, can you briefly explain the context of this email?
I had just messaged General Sam Watson and started asking how she had been. And, but my main focus was on my wife's cancer treatment.
So, what did you tell General Watson about your wife's cancer treatments?
I stated that the quarantine was killing my wife and I. It was literally killing her.
And did he offer any help?
She told me that she would see what she could do, but nothing came of that.
Was there ever a vaccine created to stabilize this virus?
Yes, there was a temporary vaccine that didn't cure it, but drastically slowed it down.
So within your military experience, would this be the prime time to deliver her treatments?
Very much so. From my perspective, the virus seemed at the most stable condition that it would be. So that would, in my opinion, be the best time to get treatment.
And did she receive treatments during this time?
No, she did not.
So, Mr. Alex, was there a full vaccine?
Yes, there was. This was 8 weeks after the quarantine started.
And did they lift the quarantine after the vaccine was administered?
Yes, they did.
So did Pat receive the treatment that she needed after they lifted the quarantine?
No, she did not.
Why not?
Pat only made it 5 weeks into the quarantine. Pat passed away in the 5th week.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness. And I'll take my next
Cross-exam?
Before I start anything, Mr. Cordova, I would like to say as a representative of the United States government, we're sincerely sorry for your loss. And if you ever feel that during this testimony you're about to give, you need to take a break, just do so.
Thank you.
So, as you stated, you toured in Africa, correct?
Right.
And during this tour in Africa, you witnessed a quarantine zone.
Yes.
And in this quarantine zone, when you arrived, the entire village was dead, correct?
Majority of the times, yes.
And you stated on direct that if they didn't die, if the people in the village didn't die, they had the virus, correct? Okay. And you said in your affidavit that this was the most horrible sight you ever saw, correct?
Right.
And actually, you said that you never would have thought that this would have came to the United States, correct?
Right.
But unfortunately, in this case, it did. In fact, it went to your hometown, correct? Right.
Get the answer out loud, please.
Yes.
And when it got into your hometown, you couldn't believe it, correct?
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Your Honor, I'll move on.
Let it be straight.
And during the time of the quarantine was placed, your wife was diagnosed with stage 4 leukemia, correct?
She had it before the quarantine, but yes.
So you had plenty of time to leave and go to Dallas, correct? To see the research hospital, correct?
No, because the email, or the statement saying we needed to go to Dallas was not released until the quarantine was in place.
But Mr. Cordova, you just stated that that she was diagnosed before the quarantine was even placed, correct?
Yes, but we were not told to go to Dallas until the quarantine was in place.
And you stated on direct that that the United States government did not provide any medical information, correct? Or any medical supplies, correct?
Right.
And did you ever directly ask General Watson if you could get any medical supplies for your wife?
I asked for a form of help, but after I lost contact because General Watson wouldn't answer me back, I didn't have a chance to ask.
And dealing with these emails that have already been introduced into evidence, you state that you lost contact, correct?
Right.
Well, the first time you messaged him, he let you know of the virus having a temporary vaccine, correct?
Right.
And then 12 days later, you messaged him again because you did not see any improvement, correct?
I saw improvement in the town, but I did not see improvement in the state of the quarantine.
And if you've seen improvement in the town, you obviously were associated with the hospital, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Simply ask my witness to speculate.
Your Honor, I'm just simply asking the witness if he was a part of the hospital, as he just stated he's seen improvement in the town.
I think you can answer whether or not he had any association with the hospital or not. As to it, beyond that, but he needs to lay a foundation before he gets an opinion beyond that.
Yes, Your Honor.
I didn't have anything to do with the hospital, but I saw people around the town.
Right. And actually, you're not a medical doctor, correct?
Right.
And you're not a part of the team that was developing the vaccine, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. He's asking this witness for improper testimony.
Your Honor.
Asking the witness to give a testimony about a position that he doesn't even have.
Well, I think you can do that on cross-examination, so I'm going to rule your objection.
So I'll re-ask my question. You were not a part of the vaccine development, correct?
Correct?
And actually, the vaccine that General Watson stated in these messages was just a temporary vaccine, correct?
Correct.
So that means that there was no cure to this virus until your wife passed away, correct? And what day exactly did your wife pass away?
I'm not 100% sure of the exact date, but it was 5 weeks after the quarantine started.
And do you know the exact date that the new cure was created?
8 weeks after the quarantine started.
You sure? Okay. And since the vaccine for the new cure took longer than it took for your wife to die, there was no possible way that the General Watson could lift this quarantine zone, correct?
Correct.
So that means that nobody in the entire town was actually cured until the cure was created, correct? So there'd have been no way that you could have left, correct?
Right, but I didn't necessarily need to.
You needed to leave to get. No further questions, Your Honor.
Brief redirect.
May I proceed?
You may.
Mr. Cordova, what effects did the temporary vaccine have on the area?
Stabilize the virus.
And once again, within your military experience, would this be a prime time for your wife to receive her treatments?
Yeah.
And did she receive these treatments?
No, she did not.
Also, do you recall stating that you were a medical professional of any kind?
No.
And do you ever recall treating anyone throughout this pandemic?
No.
So, was your testimony simply within your perception?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Henry Cross,
No, Your Honor.
you may step down. Please call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff would like to call Dr. Casey Lancaster to the stand. Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
You may.
Please introduce yourself to the court, spelling your last name for the record.
My name is Dr. Casey Lancaster, Lancaster.
Now, are you currently employed?
Yes, I'm currently the head of oncology at St. Thomas Hospital in Dallas, Texas.
What is oncology?
Oncology is the study and treatment of cancer and tumors.
And do you have any certifications in that area?
Yes, just to name a few, I'm a licensed physician, I've passed a national licensing exam, and this was after completing my doctorate of medicine and my doctorate of osteopathic medicine.
And how long have you been in this field?
I've been in the field of oncology for 14 years, so I have plenty of experience under my belt.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to turn my witness as an expert in oncology.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Let me be recognized as an expert in the field of oncology.
Now, what brings you here today?
I'm here today to testify on behalf of the plaintiff because I knew Ms. Cordova and I treated her, and I knew her personally. I treated her for 6 months because she was a stage 4 leukemia patient, and I took care of her.
Now, Dr. Lancaster, how many stages of leukemia are there?
There's 4 stages of leukemia, 4 being the worst or most aggressive, 1 being the least aggressive, and she had the most aggressive stage.
Now, being that this stage was so aggressive, what did you do to treat her?
Well, she underwent chemotherapy. With a lesser severe case of cancer, it'll be a 4-week process, but due to the severity of her cancer, it'll be an every week thing.
And how important was it that she make these appointments?
It was very important. Ms. Cordova missing 1 week of treatment could jeopardize her health greatly. The cancer in her body could spread and grow, and it could eventually kill her.
Now, Dr. Lancaster, was she ever known for missing any appointments?
No, she wasn't. She was a very cooperative patient that I've had.
And how did she respond to the treatments?
She responded decently. Stage 4 leukemia, she responded great.
Now, Dr. Lancaster, before today, has she ever missed any appointments?
Yes. Due to the quarantine I was set up, Ms. Cordova did begin to miss some treatments.
And approximately how many did she miss?
She missed 5 weeks of treatments, which is equivalent to 5 appointments, 1 each week.
Now, Dr. Lancaster, in your expert opinion, by missing 5 weeks, how could the cancer have evolved?
The cancer could have evolved greatly, spread throughout her whole body, and definitely killed her due to the aggressiveness of her cancer.
And being that you do have training in the field, how would the treatment be able to be transported to Midlands?
There's different ways to get the treatments and the medication to the patient. There's physical means of transportation. We can deliver it to her, mail it, through the air. There's different ways of getting it physically to our patient.
And being that the quarantine was in place, who would you have to get approval from?
I would have to get approval from the head of the quarantine, which was Ms. Watson, General Watson, excuse me.
Now, Dr. Lancaster, are you aware that Mrs. Cordova passed?
I couldn't speak to Ms. Cordova personally due to the quarantine, but I did speak to her husband, and through her husband I got word of Ms. Cordova passing.
And what was the cause of her death?
Well, the cancer, as expected, due to missing the treatments, it spread throughout her body, and Ms. Cordova succumbed to stage 4 leukemia.
Now, Dr. Lancaster, if Ms. Cordova was able to, if she was able to receive the treatment, would she still be here today?
Yes, with my personal experience with Ms. Cordova and my expert opinion, I believe without a doubt she would still be here to this day had she received the proper medication. She was a fighter. She was so eager. We were eager to beat this cancer, beat this sickness every day she was with us.
And why was she unable to receive her treatment?
The quarantine, it prevented anything to come to her, and it prevented her from coming to see me in Dallas. So there was no way for her to receive the medication that she so desperately needed.
And why would she have to come all the way from Dallas, being that she lives in Midlands, to get her medication?
Well, due to the outbreak and the cause of the quarantine, there was a virus outbreak, and the quarantine was around her city. And the hospitals and local clinics in her city, they lacked the proper equipment needed to treat her cancer, since it was such a severe case.
Now, how could the hospital in Midlands be able to receive that equipment?
Well, the government could have provided the money needed for the proper equipment that her and other people with the type of disease she had needed.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for my witness. I'd like to know for cross-examination.
Cross-exam.
Now, Dr. Lancaster, you are Pat's cancer doctor, correct?
That's correct.
And Pat had stage 4 leukemia, the final stage of leukemia, correct?
That's correct.
Is it true that some people who have stage 4 leukemia and who receive regular chemotherapy treatments do die from the disease, correct?
That is correct, but that's some people. Ms. Cordova was a fighter. We had high hopes of her surviving this cancer.
And is it true that Pat's local hospital, the hospital inside the quarantine, did not have the proper medical equipment to deal with cancer treatments, correct?
That is correct. The local clinics and hospitals in the area did not have the proper equipment.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You redirect.
No, Your Honor.
You may step down. Please call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to call Dr. Sinclair to the stand. Please introduce yourself to the court, spelling your last name for the record.
Taylor Sinclair, Sinclair.
And what is your educational background?
I received an undergraduate degree from University of Oregon at Midlands, and then went to medical school at Midlands Medical.
And are you currently employed?
Yes, I work at SJAG Hospital,
And how long have you been working there?
10 years.
And through your 10 years at working at SJAG, have you ever noticed a pandemic or an outbreak?
And back in 2013, January the 12th, a young boy came in with some symptoms, and we realized that it was a serious virus.
And what did the hospital proceed to do once they realized that this was a serious nature?
Well, before the hospital could take any action, the government took over.
And what did the government do?
The government set quarantine and martial law.
Now, Dr. Sinclair, did any of your patients have issues with the quarantine?
Yes, Pat Cordova.
And can you tell us a little bit more about Pat?
Pat had stage 4 leukemia, and she previously had been traveling to Dallas, Texas to receive treatment.
And was she ever able to get her treatments?
Yes, 6 months previous to the quarantine, she traveled to Dallas to get treatments. But once the quarantine was set, she couldn't leave to go get treatment.
Was this ever documented that she needed treatment?
Yes, the hospital released a statement.
And, Your Honor, may I approach the bench with what has been marked as exhibit 3?
Would you please show it to opposing counsel first?
Yes, Your Honor. Let the record reflect, I'm showing the opposing counsel. Your Honor, may I approach the
You
witness?
may.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Dr. Sinclair, do you recognize this document?
Yes,
And what is this document?
this is St. Joseph and the Archangel Gabriel Hospital's statement.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to offer file and introduce what has been marked as Exhibit 6 as plaintiff's Exhibit number 2.
Are any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
Let it be admitted.
Dr. Sinclair, can you summarize this statement?
This is a statement concerning Pat Cordova, stating that the SJAG Hospital is not equipped to handle Miss Pat's chemo treatment, and that she's being referred to Dallas for treatment.
And was she ever allowed to go to Dallas?
No, not during the quarantine.
And did she receive any medicine for her stage 4 cancer?
No.
And can you tell us why not?
Since there was a quarantine, no one could come in to give her medicine, or she could not leave to go get medicine.
And do you know of any other way she could have gotten her medicine?
Can you repeat the question?
Do you know of any other way she could have gotten her medicine?
Well, someone could have brought it in to her.
Okay, and who is in charge of setting quarantines?
General Watson.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor. I now tender my witness for cross-examination.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon. stated that the hospitals were full at capacity, correct?
Correct.
And didn't you see that many people were dying because of this virus?
Yes,
So, and you were losing staff and nurses and doctors, correct?
that's correct.
So, and in the meantime, you became to know Pat, correct?
Correct.
And she wasn't able to get her treatment because of the quarantine.
That's correct.
So, isn't it true that they placed Pat in the quarantine and she was not tested for the T virus?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Your Honor, brief redirect.
You may.
Dr. Sinclair, why was Pat not able to get her treatment?
Due to the quarantine.
And who was in charge of setting the quarantine?
General Watson.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
Yes. In the quarantine, is there any other way that people can get medicine in?
If the quarantine is lifted, yes, they can receive treatment.
Okay, but when a quarantine is set in, nobody can come in or come out, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
You may step down. Any other witnesses?
Your Honor, the plaintiff press.
Okay, the case is now with the defense. Would the defense call their first witness?
Your Honor, the defense calls Dr. Morgan Fairchild. Good morning. Please state your name for the court, spelling your last name for the record.
Dr. Morgan Fairchild, Fairchild.
And Ms. Fairchild, are you currently employed?
Yes, I am currently a virologist under command of the United States military.
And what part of the military are you a part of?
I am associated with the military of Division of Biological Threats and Diseases.
And can you please inform the court of your prior education?
Well, in 1980, I received a degree in microbiology, and then I further went on to receive my PhD in microbiology with a focus on viral infections.
Have you been recognized in this field?
Yes, I have recently been honored by the scientific community as Virologist of the Decade.
And have you accomplished anything in this field?
Well, yes, I have wrote many articles associated with the effects on lethal infections, and I have also led field researches in South America as well as Africa.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I would now like to tender my witness as an expert in the fields of microbiology with a focus in viral infection.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Let her be admitted as an expert in those areas.
And Doctor, as you mentioned earlier, can you please, as you mentioned earlier of your field research in Africa, can you please explain to the court what happened?
Yes, well, in 1990, I had the privilege to go to Africa to study an unknown virus.
And what happened once you arrived in Africa?
Well, 70% of the town had died from symptoms of the virus, and the other 30% was considered to be infected.
And what were the symptoms of this virus?
Symptoms of the virus were blood coughs as well as high fevers.
And did you perform any other type of research?
Well, unfortunately, from under higher command of the military, we had to leave.
And have you ever been able to research any other viruses?
Yes, well, in 2013, I received a call from Aaron Hunt asking my opinion about a similar case in the Midlands.
And what did you learn from this case?
Well, a young boy had been infected with a virus that was similar to the case in Africa, and he experienced blood coughs as well as high fever and red marks on the skin.
And what did you do after that?
Well, a few days later, I arrived in the Midlands.
And what happened once you arrived in the Midlands?
I realized that the city was under quarantine and no one could take a step without the permission of General Watson.
And after finding out this information, what did you do?
I received permission from the general and then started conducting research along with CDC scientist Aaron Hunt.
And what did you discover in your research?
Well, I discovered that the virus had mutated from its original structure from that of Africa.
And did you find out anything else?
Yes, well, 50% of the town was considered to be infected with the T virus.
And what were the symptoms of the T virus?
Symptoms were as well as blood coughs and high fevers.
And did this virus do anything to the body?
Yes, well, this virus caused the lungs and liver to liquefy.
And would you be able to identify a normal liver cell?
Yes, I would.
And would you be able to identify a cell that was infected from the T virus?
I would.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1 and 2?
Please show the exhibits to opposing counsel.
Yes, Your Honor. Let the record reflect I'm showing opposing counsel.
You may approach the witness.
Can you please identify Exhibit 1?
Exhibit 1 is an example of a healthy human liver tissue.
And can you identify Exhibit 2?
Exhibit 2 is an example of a liver tissue that has been infected with the T virus.
And Exhibit 2 is dealing with the virus in this case today, correct?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I would now like to offer, file, and introduce what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1 and 2 as Defense Exhibit 1 and 2.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor.
Let them be admitted.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I ask permission for my witness to step from the witness stand to give a brief observation or a demonstration. Your Honor.
You may.
Okay. Doctor, can you please identify the normal cell?
Well, yes, Exhibit 1 is an example of a healthy cell, and as you can see, they are quite small and they all have cell walls.
Okay, and can you please show the court Exhibit 2?
Yes, well, Exhibit 2 has been enlarged and swollen, and the cells have burst, causing them to liquefy.
And what happens once the cells liquefy?
Well, once the cells begin to liquefy, the person ultimately dies.
Okay, thank you. That's it. And what happened during the week 2 of quarantine?
Well, in week 2 of quarantine, 50% of the people who were infected with the virus died.
Wow. So, did you be able to collect any other information during this week?
Yes, well, we began to develop a temporary vaccine that would slow down the symptoms of the virus.
And was there anything else about this virus that you were able to identify?
Yes, by January, we were able to locate the origins of the disease, which happened to be a wild monkey.
And after you found out the monkey was the original species, what were you able to do?
Well, we ran a few tests to ensure that the monkey was the primary host of the virus, and once confirmed, we began to administer the vaccine for the T virus.
And once you began to administer the vaccine for the T virus, what did you do?
I immediately told General Watson the good news, and she congratulated me and told me she would take it from there.
And doctor, in your expert opinion, if this quarantine wouldn't have been in place, what would have happened?
Objection, Your Honor. This is outside the scope of the witness's expertise. The
Your Honor.
witness is an expert in simply biology, not logistics of the military.
Your Honor, permission to be heard.
You may.
My witness is familiar with the quarantine, and she's familiar with viral infections, and she's already laid foundation that she has been a part of a quarantine zone in Africa, so she has experience in this field.
I would tend to agree that a virologist can definitely testify as to how the virus mutates and how it expands. So we don't rule your objection.
I'll ask the question again. In your expert opinion, doctor, what would have happened if this quarantine zone wasn't in place?
Well, in my expert opinion, if this quarantine was not enacted, the virus would have spread and millions could have died.
No further question, Your Honor. I now turn to my witness for cross-examination.
Cross-exam.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Now, you developed the vaccine, the temporary vaccine, am I correct?
You're correct.
And this dropped the death rate from 50% to 5%, am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
This was all within 48 hours, right?
Yes.
Pretty amazing. Dr. Fairchild, after you created this vaccine, the virus was stabilized, am I right?
Yes, the virus was stabilized, but it was not yet completely cured.
So since the virus was stabilized, then, in your opinion, quarantine may have been easier to lift or may have been lessened, am I correct?
Well, no, quarantine would have still been enacted, being that the final cure was not developed until the end of February.
But I'm asking, would the quarantine be lessened?
No.
I have no further questions, John.
Can we redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Doctor, this temporary vaccine was that temporary, correct?
Yes, the temporary vaccine just slowed symptoms. It did not cure it.
So even though this vaccine decreased the number of people dying, the virus was still out there, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So there could have been a chance of this spreading, correct?
Yes.
And if this would have spreaded, this would have maybe went global?
Yes, if the virus would have spread, millions could have died.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down. Please call your next witness.
The defense would like to call Aaron Hunt. Please introduce yourself to the court, spelling your last name for the record.
Aaron Hunt, H-U-N-T.
And are you employed, Ms. Hunt?
Yes, I work for the CDC, and I specialize in the developing and implementing of vaccines.
And how did you become a CDC scientist?
I attended a four-year university and got my bachelor degree. Then after that, I continued to go on and specialize in the developing and implementing.
Objection, Your Honor, this is nowhere in the witness's affidavit.
May I be heard?
You may.
Your Honor, I'm simply laying foundation to enter this witness as an expert in the field of developing and implementing of vaccines.
This is contained within the affidavit
No, Your
or
Honor.
qualifications.
Yes. It says that she is a CDC scientist and she is in charge of developing and implementing of vaccines.
Your Honor, although it does say that, it doesn't say how she became a CDC scientist.
I think that's a reasonable extrapolation, so I'm going to overrule your objection.
I'll ask my question again. How did you become a CDC scientist?
I attended a four-year university in the Midlands area, earned my bachelor's degree, and continued my education to specialize in developing and implementing of vaccinations.
And is this your first time developing and implementing of vaccines?
No, it is my mission to treat and help contain and stabilize viruses.
I would now like to enter this witness as an expert in the field of developing and implementing of vaccines.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Let her be recognized as an expert in that field.
Earlier you stated that you were in the Midlands, so why were you in the Midlands?
I was called there January of 2013 to help find a cure for the outbreak of a virus.
And what did you do to try to stop this virus?
I partnered with Dr. Fairchild to find a temporary vaccine.
And what were the hospitals like?
They were extremely crowded and they were starting to overflow into the schools.
And how was the staff at SJAG?
Objection, Your Honor, opinion.
Your Honor, she's an expert.
Your Honor, although she is an expert, she isn't entitled to give her opinion on another hospital.
Your Honor, it says
Well, to tell you the truth, I think the question's a little vague, because how is the staff doesn't really, I mean, that is a very vague question, so I'm going to sustain the objection on the basis of vagueness, not on speculation, although if she lays a foundation to give specifics, then I will allow it. If she doesn't, then I will entertain another objection.
And earlier you talked about the vaccine. So how long did this vaccine take?
About 6 weeks.
And in your expert opinion, why was the quarantine enacted?
Because if the quarantine would not have been enacted, it could have spread, it could have went nationwide, even global, and killed millions of people.
Thank you. No further questions. I'll now tender my witness for cross-examination.
Cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
You may.
Now, you did say when you arrived there that the hospitals were overcrowded, right?
Definitely.
And you also stated in your affidavit that the hospitals were not provided with the proper equipment to treat the patients that were there, right?
No, they were not.
Now, moving on to the vaccine, you were responsible in the creation of the temporary vaccine, correct?
Yes, I was.
And the temporary vaccine helped to slow down the virus, right?
Yes, it did.
Yet martial law was still in place
Of course it was.
and enforced strongly,
Yes.
even though you supposedly had control over the virus, right?
We did not have complete control over the virus.
But you did have some control.
Yes, very
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down. Please call your next witness.
The defense would like to call Samantha Watson. Permission to proceed?
You bet.
Please state your name.
Samantha Watson.
And what do you do, Ms. Watson?
I currently serve as a general for the United States.
And how did you become general of the United States?
I've always been really interested in the military growing up, and as soon as I became of age, I entered the academy and graduated and worked my way up to become a general.
And why are you here today, General Watson?
Because of the quarantine that was enacted by me over Midlands.
Was this your first interaction with a quarantine?
No, as soon as I graduated, there was a similar outbreak in Africa in a large village, and I led a group of troops through the village and tried to diminish that.
What did you see when you arrived at this village?
Ironically, it was very calm and quiet, very empty, not what I was expecting to see.
What did you find out about the virus?
After we had arrived, we had been there for a little bit, and we found out that it was so calm and quiet because the virus had killed everyone in the village.
And what exactly is a quarantine?
A quarantine is where an area is isolated and no one can enter or leave so that the virus or infection that's there doesn't escape.
Did you personally know anyone inside this quarantine in Midlands?
In Midlands, yes, Pat and his wife.
And how do you get supplies into a quarantine?
It's very limited. Really only the necessities, food, water, and any medical supplies that are brought in are sent to me from an order from the hospital, and then I send it further to the military and then the pilots and the plane. It's very scheduled and very limited to what you can get in.
And why was this quarantine essential?
Well, once we saw what happened in Midlands, we all got flashbacks. Pat was there with me in Africa, knew that this could not break out in the United States. If it did, it would really be detrimental for our population. We knew we had to have a quarantine.
No further questions. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
General Watson, one of your duties as General of the United States is to set and lift quarantines, correct?
Correct?
And you set a quarantine in January of 2013, right?
That's correct.
That was the same time, around the time that you found out that Ms. Pat Cordova had stage 4 cancer, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Cordova also told you that his wife needed her treatments, correct?
Yes, I was aware.
And you did not allow her to leave?
No one was allowed to leave. Anyone that was a citizen of Midlands was confined to Midlands.
You did not even allow her to receive any of her medicines?
Anything that I could bring in that for supplies had to be ordered from the hospital. We didn't specifically order supplies for one person. It was the general population of who was in dire need of these supplies.
So she wasn't the only one who needed chemotherapy, right?
I'm sure not, but there was no way to get it. She was traveling to Dallas to get her treatments done because our hospitals weren't equipped even with or without a quarantine. So even if the supplies would have been dropped to Midlands, we wouldn't have been able to see out the treatments.
General Watson, don't you think it was possible for the government to airdrop the medicine for Ms. Cordova?
Object, Your Honor, on the count of speculation.
Your Honor, I'm just asking if it was possible because anything is possible. They dropped the necessities such as food and water, but did not drop medicine for cancer patients.
I think that she's qualified to answer that question since she was in command. So I don't know who would reject.
Yes, Your Honor.
It It just was not plausible in this situation. In a situation of this emergency and mass chaos, we could only bring in things that were very needed by a large population. Like I said earlier, it's very limited to what you can bring in anyways during the time of a quarantine.
And General Watson, are you aware that Ms. Cordova died of stage 4 cancer because she did not get any of her treatment?
I'm aware that she didn't receive her treatment, and I'm aware that she unfortunately passed away because of cancer.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
You may step down. Are there any other witnesses from the defense?
At this time, Your Honor, the defense.
Okay, we'll give you 1 minute to prepare your closing arguments. Kind of a short time. Okay, are we ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
It is said that one death is a tragedy, but a million is a statistic. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are focusing on one tragedy, and that is the tragedy of Pat Cordova dying because the government refused to give her the treatment that she needed. There was an outbreak of a virus in Africa. It killed an entire village. And then it resurfaced 25 years later in the Midlands of Louisiana. And the government did the right thing. They placed the quarantine. They enacted martial law. But one thing they did not do was that under martial law, the government is accepting sole responsibility of every single individual. Every single one. So when the government failed to give Pat Cordova her desperately needed treatments, it was their fault. Today, the defendants have painted you a post-apocalyptic version of America. They have told you that if they had not contained this disease, that it would have spread and killed half the population. Now, this might be true. However, one thing that is true, because they neglected, because they denied and refused a dying woman of the care that they were full aware that she needed, she didn't survive the quarantine. The quarantine was 8 weeks, 2 months long. Pat Cordova missed 5 cancer treatments within those 8 weeks. She died on the 6th week. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat Cordova didn't stand a chance. And the government, they left her to die, confined on her bed in quarantine. You heard from Alice Cordova that not only was it possible for her to receive her treatments during the time that the disease was stabilized, but it wouldn't undermine the quarantine. It wouldn't undermine martial law. You also heard from Lancaster, who told you that she desperately needed every single week of treatment. For every week of treatment she missed, it was a leap in the direction of her own death. Lastly, you heard from Ms. Taylor Sinclair, who testified that General Watson had received a direct recommendation letter to send Pat Cordova help. But also, what you've heard on the defense side from General Watson herself was excuses. You heard every reason why she could not, but you didn't hear anything about her trying. All she told you was that the quarantine was strict. But the government had made absolutely no semblance of an effort to save this woman's life. You also heard from Dr. Fairchild, who testified that this disease was stabilized. And the window of time that it was stabilized was perfect to give her the treatment she needed. Yes, Pat already missed a few weeks, but any help is better than none. Today, they give absolutely nothing. Also, you heard from Aaron Hunt, who told you that they did not send necessary supplies. They did not send anything, ladies and gentlemen. And by doing that, they infringed on Pat Cordova's Fifth Amendment right. Her right to movement, which means that she could have exited and gotten treatment, or the treatment could have been brought to her. But more importantly, she was deprived of her right to live. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they'll tell you that the good of the many outweighs the good of the few. And in Star Trek, that's the case. But in real life, the value of life is equal, meaning each and every individual, every single breath that they take is just as equal as everyone else's. So if you find that the government did not have compelling evidence to let this woman die in quarantine, to let this woman not have a fighting chance at life, then give Alex and Pat Cordova the justice they deserve by rendering your verdict in favor of the plaintiff. Thank you.
Defense?
May it please the court. Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. A very evil man once said that one man's death is a tragedy, but over millions of people's death is a statistic. We feel that every life in the United States of America is sacred, but in a time of crisis, our goal as the United States government is to save each and every single life as we possibly can. General Watson put a quarantine up in the city of Midland because as Ms. Morgan Fairchild told you, that during the first week alone of quarantine, over 25% of Midland's population was already dead. That means 1/4 of the population of the city was gone. It was a drastic measure. It was a drastic disease that needed to be enacted with strict force. The plaintiff tried to convince you today that we should have done better, that we should have got air supply, we should have got medical supplies, we should have got the medical supplies dropped. The reason that we couldn't have got it dropped was because this was one person. We had a general population to take care of. Over 50% of the town was infected with a lethal virus that was killing. General Watson did everything in her power to prevent this disease from spreading throughout the entire state of Louisiana, throughout the entire United States, and throughout the entire world. This could have been a global pandemic. And thanks to her team, they've created a cure that cured everyone in the state. You've heard from Alex Cordova, who told you he had no reason to leave the quarantine zone. He told you that he didn't even know his own wife's date of death. Does this seem like a concerned husband? You've heard from Dr. Lancaster, who told you that the hospital in Midlands was not even equipped to have chemotherapy sessions there. Is it even possible for her to get better in a situation where there's no equipment? And you've heard from Ms. Taylor Sinclair. She's told you that the hospital just didn't have any space. They didn't have any space to treat these people. They had few beds. How can they treat one person that has chemo when there's 50% of the population infected with a deadly virus? So we called our witnesses. Let's call Ms. Erin Hunt, who told you that she tried her hardest. She worked day in and day out and day in and day out and sacrificed many hours to provide for a cure for this disease. You've heard from Ms. Morgan Fairchild, who came to Midlands without any ask to come because she is so passionate about her job and she's so passionate about getting this world better to where she sacrificed 6 weeks of her life to provide for a cure. And you've heard from General Samantha Watson herself. She told you all she wanted to do was have the greater good of everyone. She wanted to save everyone in the population, in the city of Midlands. She wanted to save everyone. She did not want this disease to get out. She did not want this disease to become global. She did not want it. Could you imagine a world where 1/4 of the population is gone? So like the plaintiff has said, one man's death is a tragedy, but over millions is a statistic. But thanks to our wonderful team, Midlands is not a statistic. It is an outbreak of a virus that was controlled, cured, and conquered. Our wonderful team provided each and everything to fit the general population. A single person cannot be singled out. When caring for a crisis, you must prepare for the entire population. And we believe as the defense, we have proven by a preponderance of evidence, or simpler words, more likely than not, that according to the Fifth Amendment right, we have proven with compelling interest that this quarantine was placed accurately and fairly. It was managed fairly across the board for each and every citizen of the city of Midlands. So we ask you as the jury to take in consideration of half your family died, 25% of your family died. How would you feel? Find the United States government not liable, because the greater good of everyone outweighs the needs of the few. Thank you.
Rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard exactly what I told you. They stood here and told you about a world full of dead people and what they could have done and what they did to save the world.
Now, if you're paying close attention to the trials today, we are not knocking the fact that they placed in quarantine. We're not knocking the fact that they developed the vaccine. We are not knocking the fact that the disease was indeed dangerous. But what we are doing is saying that General Watson, along with everyone else of the government who established this martial law, was liable for every single individual's life. They were liable for Alice Cordova's life just as much as they were liable for Pat Cordova's life. And in order to preserve her life like she so rightly deserved, they would have to give her treatment. Now, you've heard that everything was all about them. How they saved the world, how without them we would all be dead, how without them we are nothing. But with them, a woman with stage 4 leukemia laid in her bed for 5 straight weeks without treatment, without any hope, with despair. She died that exact same way. So yes, the government is absolutely 100% without a doubt liable for Pat Cordova's death. They are liable for not giving her treatment. They are liable for denying her of the thing that she needs the most. We, the plaintiffs, know that you believe that as well. We know you will render your verdict in favor of us to give Alice Cordova, as well as the rest of Midlands, the justice that they deserve. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's now your turn to decide whether the government is liable or whether the government is not liable. The rule of law has been mentioned, and that is that there is a Fifth Amendment right that each citizen is entitled to travel unless there is a compelling interest by the government to restrict such travel. So at this time, I'm going to ask by show of hands how you would decide this case as a jury. All those who would rule in favor of the plaintiff against the United States of America, please raise your hand. All those who would rule in favor of the United States against the plaintiff, raise your hand. Ooh, this is close. We need to try this again. Those in favor of the plaintiff, raise your hand. Does one member of my team make a count there?
Bailiff count.
Bailiff.
Can we like give them to move?
Sarah, you got it?
23? 24.
Okay, all those in favor of the United States government, please raise your hand.
I'm at 23.
23 too.
Oh my God. Okay, how about y'all move, actually like physically move?
Actually, if you are in favor of the defense's case today, get up and move over here. We're gonna do a head count that way. If you really, really are in favor of the defense, just come on. It's for the greater good, the United States.
No, you're not gonna do that.
No, she said no one would want to get up, and I was encouraging them to get up.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, I'll stay still. 6.
That means y'all all did great. How was split?
It's 23.
23? How many do we have?
So just sit still.
26.
26 to 23 vote. Go ahead and turn the camera.